might seem like a kind of silly question to a lot of people who've been around Christianity for a while to say, well, what is discipleship? But it's not that silly a question that I've certainly encountered. So I'll tell you a story about that. But along the way, I need to ask you, what is a leader? Because you can't understand discipleship if you don't understand what a leader is. And then I want to walk you through the most important commandment that Jesus ever gave, the one he described as the most important, and then ask, what does that mean for you in your daily life? I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And when I was in junior high school, I had a brand new teacher who came into the social studies class I was taking and wanted to enlighten us about the role of religion in history and culture, which is a good thing and one that is not prohibited by the United States Constitution. Because as a historian, and that's one of the hats I wear, religion has been a very important part of all of Western history, even before Christianity ever came on the scene. And he started his presentation by saying, well, Christianity is a religion, but Buddhism is a way of life. Which he meant by that Christianity is primarily a set of rituals, but Buddhism is what teaches you how to become a good person and live a good life. And what that really showed, and I could even see this as a seventh grader, was that this person didn't really understand Christianity very well. And as I became a scholar of religion, I came to realize this fellow didn't understand religion at all. See, if you go to study Buddhism, you'll see that Buddhism has priests, it has temples, and it has rituals, what we technically call a cult, not the weird varieties of religions that we talk about, but cult in technical terminology refers to any kinds of religious repetitive patterns. So any kind of prayers or scriptures or reading these things, communion, bar mitzvahs, marriages, this is all part of the cult, if you will, of religions. Buddhism has it just like Christianity does. But also, his biggest mistake was in missing the fact that Christianity has always, from its very beginnings, been a way of life. Religion and philosophy have always been tightly woven together, because I don't know of a religion that doesn't have ethics. Now, I'm not a scholar of the history of religions and religions in general, but I can tell you for lockstep certain that Christianity has, from its very beginning, been a way of life, was described as a way in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, in the book of Acts, and this weird little book called the Didache, or the Teaching of the 12 Apostles, which was circulating in the early 2nd century. This is at the very, very end of the time of the composition of the New Testament. And the book begins, there are two ways, one of life, one of death, and great is the difference between the two. This was probably circulating in churches around the same time John was writing the Revelation and his gospel. So Christianity has always been a way of life. And if Christianity is a way, Well, how do I find that way? Well, the way you find that way is to find a leader who will lead you in that way. If you want to be a disciple, if you want to know what Christianity is about, it is all about following Jesus. And in order to follow Jesus, Jesus has to be the leader of your life. Now, when people say Jesus needs to be your Lord, that's a phrase that made a lot of sense to people generations ago, but kind of goes over people today. So my pastor in Lexington, Kentucky, took to telling people in his church plant, before he came to pastor our church, came to tell people that Jesus needs to be the leader of your life. Because we understand what a leader is. A leader is somebody you follow. A leader is somebody who says, do that, and your response is when? How? He says jump, your response is how high? If you want to follow a leader, you pattern your life after the leader. Okay? If this leader is worth following, it's worth you being like him. If this leader has ethical qualities that you like, well, you want to imitate them. If you want to follow this leader, you want to share the values that the leader has. If the leader thinks it's a good thing to kill people, well, then you'll start killing people. If you think the leader's values of helping people are good, well, then you'll ask, well, how can I help people in the same way? And you will act like the leader acts. If the leader is generous, you will want to be generous. If the leader is honest, you will want to be honest. If the leader twists things, lies, well, then you'll start lying and twisting things because you're following the leader. Okay? You can have good leaders who are godly people, and you can have bosses of narco gangs. Those guys are leaders. And the people who follow them become like the leader. Well, this is what leadership is. The $64,000 question you have to ask yourself in a program like this is Jesus the leader of your life, or are you the leader? I wish I could say that a program like this will work if you still want to hold the wheel and drive the car. But I'd be lying to you. Even AA programs acknowledge that there is a higher power that you have to acknowledge if you're going to make the program work. Well, that's just a vague reflection of the genuine spiritual reality that it's only Jesus and Christianity that can break the hold of sin and addiction on your life. And the other thing about Jesus is that he is never going to put a gun to your head and say, believe or I'll blow your brains out. This is not medieval Islam where they put a sword to your throat and say, convert or die. Jesus is like the father of the prodigal son. He is standing at the parapet of his big old house, and he is looking out the window to see if the son will come back. In fact, he goes beyond that prodigal son's father in that he goes out and seeks us. The Holy Spirit is the hound of heaven who's always at our heels, nipping at us, saying, come back, come back, come back. Jesus can give you everything you need in this program except your own willingness. That's the one thing he asks for. If you're not willing to let him be the leader, well then, the program is not going to work. So what is the most important command that Jesus gave? How can you summarize the way of Christianity? Well, Jesus was asked this question in Matthew chapter 22. There are, in Jewish thinking, 613 different commandments in the Old Testament. 365 and 248. Positive commandments, negative commandments. How do you keep 613 commandments straight in your mind? So this fellow says, well, what is the core of his teaching? What's the most important commandment? If you can't keep all 613, which one do you want to keep? Well, Jesus says actually there's not one, there's two. You have to love the Lord your God with everything that you are. Every aspect of your being has to love God. Then you have to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then Matthew reports Jesus saying, very significantly, everything that is in the law can be derived from these two statements. If you knew nothing else about Christianity except for these two sentences, you could figure out the rest of it. If you love the Lord your God with everything that you are, and you love your neighbor as yourself, everything else in Christianity follows from this. So what do I mean? If I love God with all that I am, that means God will determine my priorities. Because your God, what you serve, determines what your priorities are. Y'all had a different God when you came here. Your God came in a little bottle of some kind, whether it was a powder, a liquid, or a tablet, or whatever it was. Your God was some kind of man-made or natural chemical. Now, I never had that particular God, but I've had other gods, as all human beings have had other gods. And it could be money, it could be sex, control, success. Take your pick. But also, sobriety can't be your God either. Because sobriety is a result. It's not something to worship. It's not a God. In other words, by following God and by having your character and life transformed by God, well, sobriety is a result of that. But it's a byproduct. It's not the ultimate God. Now, if you want to love God, you have to live with God. And to live with God, you have to acknowledge that your relationship has been broken with Him because of disobedience. And you have to accept that he is a loving father who sent his son to pay the penalty and heal the results of that rebellion. So you are reconciled to God by acknowledging that you have this need to be reconciled. And you are willing to love him, to make him the highest priority in your life, to make him be your leader. And we'll work out how that works out in later presentations. But the second part of this is to love others. Now, this is where my social studies teacher completely missed the boat. Because the idea that Christianity is just a religion means that Christianity is done within the four walls of some kind of holy building. That is a warped, terribly distorted view of what Christianity really is. Christianity is 99% lived outside of the walls of a physical church building. Because it's done with your friends, it's done with your family, it's done with your job. It is done every day of the week, every hour of the week, not just the 1 or 2 or 3 holy hours on Sunday or Wednesday or Saturday or whatever it is. And most importantly, it touches every aspect of your life. It's not just some ideas I have about some supernatural being somewhere. It affects my character and the way I treat other people. As you love yourself means that you have to ask yourself, would I want somebody to treat me this way? So have you ever been lied to? Oh, this is good stuff. Yeah? And I ended up in the ER. I almost died. How'd that work out? You ever been used? Oh, I thought they cared for me. All they wanted was my cash. Do you like that? I wonder. You ever been abandoned? How'd that feel? Not so good. Well, if these don't feel good to you, they didn't work out for you. Y'all can't do that to other people. So honesty is not an option for Christians. It's an obligation. It's something we have to live with. And the good news here is that God can renovate our character so that honesty becomes more attractive to us than lying, becomes more natural to us than lying. But that's part of the renovation project. So let's look at this again from a slightly different perspective. You ever been in a burger joint and you've waited a half an hour for a meal? You know, the line just is moving nowhere, and you put in your order and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And you go up and say, "What's the deal here, man?" "Oh, well, we're shorthanded today. Joe called in sick. And he did this again to us. So we can't keep up." So how'd that feel? Pretty bad, didn't it? Well, so I finally get my order. I didn't want pickles. I don't like onions. But it's on the burger. Well, just Sally isn't very careful. She doesn't seem to care. So I'm the manager. I'll get you one myself. But that didn't feel so good neither. So look me in the eye and tell me that you have never, ever slacked, not cared, mailed it in. No, I can't tell you that, okay? And I don't have the same problem you do, okay? If I can't tell you, let's be real. So often, when we are our own gods, everything is about me. Everything is about what I want and what's good for me. I never think about what my actions do to somebody else. Well, in order to love others, I have to take my self-centeredness out of the equation. And I have to ask myself, if I call in sick today, if I mail it in, if I slack off, what does that do to the people that I'm working with? Well, that means they got to pick up the slack for me. They've already got their own job to do. Why am I making them do my job? And when I hurt the team, I hurt the customers that I'm working for. They expected to be promptly served, and they expected to be served correctly. They expected the job to be done right. They expected that the firewood was the right size. They expected that the firewood was properly dried. They expect the concrete is poured correctly, that the framing of the house is done correctly. Well, if I want to love others the way I love myself, I need to treat them in these kinds of positive ways, which means I've got to show up for work. I've got to do it properly. And this is not just some separate kind of issue. This is part of discipleship. Because you see, if I mail it in, people get the idea that, oh, well, Christians are slackers. They mail it in. So what kind of religion is this? It's just an excuse for people to feel better about themselves. No. You see, if I'm going to be a disciple, job number one is my self-centered ways have to go. And this is a long process, friends. It doesn't happen overnight. Because, goodness, I've been married 47 years. And I'm still finding ways that I'm selfishly taking advantage of my wife. I've been a Christian, and my wife has been a Christian all 47 of those years. I've been in ministry for many of those years. So I'm not going to fool you. This is a hard task. This is something where you have to be, as we'll see later, you have to be part of a community. You have to have people that are keeping you accountable. You have to keep having data, input put into your life. You have to have challenge from pastors, teachers, friends who encourage you to take another step in the right direction. So my selfish ways have to go because I'm no longer number one. God is number one. The people around me are number two. I'm number 3 in the list. My character has to change. This is what the journey of renovation is all about. It's about changing your character so that you'll tell the truth even when it hurts. Hey, I screwed up. No, Charlie, it's not your fault that this decision was made. I was part of the decision. I should have stepped up and said, do something differently. Okay? I take responsibility for my own lack of love, for my own character flaws. When something goes sideways, I don't point the finger out there and say, well, it's your fault. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount challenged people, how is it that you're going to take a speck of sawdust out of somebody else's eyes when you have a floor joist in your eye? Take out the floor joist first. Ask yourself, where did I mess up to contribute to this mistake, this blunder that happened? Okay. If the team lost the game, how did I contribute to that failure? What could I have done that was better? What was my part in that disaster? And so I have to ask myself first about me before I start pointing fingers at other people. Yes means yes, no means no. I don't find this easy. I'd much rather tell you, oh yeah, I'll get that done. And I know there's no way in the world I'm going to get it done. But I'd like you to be happy with me. But see, I want you to be happy with me now. I'm not thinking about the fact that when I fail and when I put you out and I make your life difficult, you're going to dislike me a lot more at that point than you would dislike me at the very beginning if I'm just honest with you and say, I'm sorry, I don't have the bandwidth to do that. I don't have the skills to do that. I mean, I'd love to be able to build that house for you, but I'm not a good rough carpenter. Okay? I've never learned how to pour concrete. Okay? Don't ask me about drywall and plaster. That's a disaster, you know. So when I say yes, I need to be reliable enough and have the skills to be able to do what it was that I promised I would do. And if I can't do it, I need to say no. And I need to be upfront and honest with you about this. Ultimately, I have to be reliable and trustworthy. People need to know that when they talk to Jim and he says, yeah, I'll do something, he's a reliable individual. He will tell you what he can do. He will tell you the truth. You can believe, you can trust him, you can rely on him, especially in a pinch. Because if I need something at a particular point and I call Jim, he'll come through and deliver for me. So my character has to change from somebody who is a user of other people to a person who can be relied upon and is trustworthy. My character also has to change because I have to live within a family. As an addict, everything is about me, and I don't care about anybody else. and I destroy the relationships around me. If my character changes, it means that I am living within a family. Because God has placed you here at Huntersfield in a community. There are people around you who support you, who love you, who are there for you, and who accept you as you are, accept you as the work in progress that you are. And with that community comes those kinds of benefits, that you have the support of people like Charlie and Leon. But it also comes with responsibilities. You need to get along with the other people that are here. You need to live by the house rules. You need to take into account, as we've been saying, the needs of others and place those above the needs of yourself. There are no entitlements here. You have benefits, and with those benefits come responsibilities. And so this kind of adult character is what is the result of the kind of change, the kind of renovation that this program is designed to produce. I'd love to tell you that this is just going to happen overnight, but it's not. This is a long process. The last thing in the world this is instantaneous. Now it begins here, and the beginning and the first steps are valuable because these are real and hopefully lasting changes in your life. But the idea that you have arrived or will arrive at any point in this life is an illusion. You see, if you stop growing, it's a fairly sure sign that you're dying or dead, because all human beings change. We'll talk about this in a later presentation. But it's a process that goes on throughout your life. I've been married some 47 years, and I am still finding places in my life where God convicts me that I'm not acting in a genuinely loving manner toward my wife. My wife and I have been Christians throughout this whole 47 years of marriage. I've been in ministry for any number of those years. So I'm still working at it. And you'll be working at this till the day you die. Now, we hope, and it's probably true, that it's not going to be as hard as it is now, because it will get easier. And I'll show you why in a later presentation. The longer you're at this, the more natural it becomes to you. But there's still awful lots of things that we're moving toward. And this is because Jesus' followers in the Gospels were called his students. But that's what the Greek word that we usually translate disciples means. They're students. But not students like in a classroom where you're memorizing things in order to write them down on a test, or philosophical ideas, or mathematical equations. Ancient students were more like apprentices, because ancient education was a more holistic kind of thing. It wasn't just memorizing disconnected facts. It was about learning to think and act like the master. Think for a moment of a person who wants to become a carpenter. You apprentice yourself as a novice to a master carpenter. And the carpenter shows you what to do. And you start to do the things that the master shows you. And before you know it, a year or two later, you're a journeyman. And after more time and more practice and more consultation with masters, you eventually become a master carpenter yourself. You have become what your master is. See, there's a big difference between just being told something and being able to do it and do it repetitively and do it well. Again, I could show you in 10, 20 seconds how to throw a curveball, throw a forkball, or some other kind of pitch like that. But for you to be able to actually throw the ball so that it curves or dips or does whatever, that's going to take more time. And if you want to think that you're going to do this at the major league level, well, that takes years, not to mention significant physical talent. Apprenticeship, being a student, is a long-term process of watching, learning, doing. So the real test of being a Christian disciple is not what theological ideas do you know, how many Bible verses you can spout. The real test of a Christian disciple is, do you think like? Do you act like? Do you talk like the master, the leader, who is the leader of your life? When you can open Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you can see how Jesus relates to other people and what Jesus' character is like, and you can say honestly, well, yes, that's the way I treat people, then you are a real advanced master disciple, because you are thinking, acting, and behaving like your leader. So what key takeaways do we have from this? First of all, that following Jesus, what we call discipleship, is not limited to a couple of hours a week in a holy building. The vast majority of your life as a disciple will happen outside the walls of a church. Secondly, following Jesus, being a disciple, is learning how to live as Jesus lived. Now, of course, there are differences between you and Jesus. Jesus performed miracles that we're not likely to perform. And he had a special and unique relationship with his Father, which we don't have because we're not part of the Trinity. But his character, the way he treated people, the way he loved people, the way he did what was right, the way he stood for, spoke for the truth, those are all things which are open to us. And we need to take that example seriously. Being a disciple, thus, renovates my character. If I am following Jesus, I am becoming more honest, dependable, more trustworthy each day I go. If I'm a disciple of Jesus, I care about other people, not just myself. If I'm following Jesus, I want to follow God's plan, not mine. I mean, after all, your plan is what got you here. How'd that work out for you? You need to follow somebody else's plan. And the other key takeaway is that while I am becoming more like Christ, I am receiving God's love. In fact, it is God's love which makes it possible for my character to change. Because it's only as I am reconciled to God, as the Holy Spirit is present within me, as the Holy Spirit is transforming my character, as I work with God to effect that transformation, my character changes, and I become someone who shows other people what God is like. The most powerful testimony that you can have is for people who knew you in the past to meet you after you go through the program. And they see you're not the self-centered individual that you used to be. You don't have the character flaws that they remember and associate with you. You're a different kind of person. And when they ask you, man, what changed? Well, let me introduce you to the leader I follow, who can be your leader too, and who can make your life like what he's made mine. This character change earns you the opportunity to be heard and to tell people what it is that God is capable of doing in their lives just as he's done in yours. So discipleship is being like Jesus.